Okay, so I'm going to start with a symptoms video for my truck. It is a 95 Chevy 1500, K1500 4 drive, extended cab, 350 V8 automatic. It's pretty well stock except for a K&N stock type air filter, 154,000 miles. I would say it's my daily driver, but over the last maybe 6-7 years, it really hasn't seen a lot of daily driving other than the last couple of months, maybe the last 4 or 5 months. I was driving it to the other side of Indianapolis, which was about 40 miles, and that's really when I started noticing the symptom. And I'm going to take it for a drive later to really show it, but I'm going to hook up the vacuum gauge and the fuel pressure gauge back up to it to get a video of what's going on. I guess I'd like to review what I've posted in a thread on Eric the Car Guy's forums. Eric the Car Guy has responded to this thread a couple times, and it's probably not his typical car that he kind of works on. It's a 95, so it's not OBD2, and that's a huge problem. So, you know, I might be able to flash some codes, but I can't really dig deep in with a computer. So, you know, it's where the vacuum gauge and fuel pressure gauge come into, and just general guessing. So let's see, I posted on there. The symptom is it's wanting to hesitate or stall or stumble off the line, but only after it's hot. And like if I took it out right now, it wouldn't do it because it's cold. But if I drove it for about 20 minutes, it would do this. And I want to be specific about throttle position here, because like if this is idle and that's full throttle, I'm only talking just a little bit off of idle is when it's doing it. Now usually what will happen is, especially lately, is I'll hit it just a little bit, it'll stumble, I'll let off and go right back to the same place and it'll be fine. It's crazy. So initially, and it's not always off idle, but I haven't got through this lately, but it was kind of stumbling at cruising speed or when I'm trying to accelerate some, which, you know, like I said, I haven't had it come back. I may have had more than a couple problems, and I may have fixed one while I was working on this off the line stumble. I'm not real sure. Let's see, I would say last year sometime I swapped out the throttle body. This is a throttle body injected V8. It's not multi-port. It's not what everybody thinks is Vortec. It has Vortec heads, but it's not got the Vortec intake. I think I was having hard start or no start problems, and I wanted to blame the throttle body somehow. And I didn't have a fuel pressure gauge, I didn't have vacuum gauge or nothing hooked up to it. I just wanted to swap it out just because, you know, it's kind of a preventative maintenance kind of a thing. So I ordered one on eBay, which was kind of a mistake, but it came and it was the wrong one on the base where the butterflies are. The throttle position sensor was different. So I ended up just cleaning up my old base and using the new top with the new injectors and the new fuel pressure regulator. And from what I can tell, it solved the hard start, no start problem, but now I've got this off the line hesitation problem, and it actually seemed to get progressively worse for a while. And now I'm back down to it's not so bad because of maybe some things I've been doing. So fuel pressure regulator, I do not believe is adjustable on the throttle body. And one of the things that I started doing when I was researching this was trying to focus on what everybody thought it was, and EGR kept coming up. So I have actually taken off the EGR valve itself and actuated it by hand and put my finger over the nipple, and it didn't move. So I don't think it's leaking, and I think it will operate correctly. It's like 80 degrees outside, so I'm sweating and wiping my face, sorry. And I also took it for a drive and had the solenoid unplugged, and I threw a service engine soon light. So I'm fairly certain that those two items are okay, although I do kind of want to put the vacuum gauge on the atmosphere or vent nipple and see if it's pulling vacuum through that. I might have a leaky solenoid. And more recently, I was throwing a service engine soon light again for the EGR. I flashed the codes and it was EGR again, and I found that one of the boots for the vacuum lines, I had split it in half to get it off because it was just welded on there by itself, and apparently I just missed it and put it right back on. So I replaced that and quit throwing that code. So also just general vacuum leaks was another top problem, and Eric the Car Guy has a video about spraying. He has a video about spraying carbon choke cleaner around the engine while it's running and listening for an RPM change. I did this once, maybe twice, but it was cold both times and never heard nothing. So I just assumed I didn't have a vacuum leak. But I will say I went back, I was going to put on got the fuel pressure gauge finally. When I was putting that on, I found that the 3 bolts that hold down the throttle body were loose. So I tightened them up much better. I guess I reused the old gasket between the throttle body and intake. So I went and got a new gasket and bolted it down and torqued it down good while I was putting on the fuel pressure adapter. So vacuum leaks seems unlikely, especially when it's cold. I'm not ruling it out yet though, because like I said, it seems to be a problem when it's hot. So I'm kind of down to like maybe ignition module or maybe even the EGR solenoid is acting up when it's hot. I don't know, but it's just the symptom only happening when it's hot is a big clue that's not a bunch of this other stuff that everybody keeps saying. Like fuel pressure. Got my fuel pressure gauge on there and I'll put it back on again. It never fluctuates from like 9 or PSI unless you're at like wide open throttle, and then it might get down to 6. But I don't have problems at wide open throttle. And if it was a fuel pressure problem, wouldn't it be a problem whether it was hot or cold? You know, not only when it's hot. I don't know. Somebody mentioned that the fuel might be boiling in the lines. I guess it's a possibility. Somebody did mention a way to check to see if the fuel pump is tired, or if the fuel filter is clogged, or if the fuel pressure regulator needs adjusted or is bad or something. And I think it had something to do with pinching off the return line, and I just haven't got to that yet. But if I don't start figuring out what's going on, I will go back to that. And I don't know that bumping it up, I think he said it needed to be 12, 14 PSI, which, what's a few PSI, I don't know. But I will say also, the exhaust smelled bad. I really haven't noticed it lately. And I wouldn't say it smelled like rotten eggs or sulfur or whatever. It just smelled bad. Kind of like bad gas or something. I couldn't really explain it. I was kind of trying to look for something where somebody was trying to explain bad gas smells and what they meant and all that, and I never really did find anything specific. Another thing on the ignition, Eric has another video about looking for voltage leaks, and basically it's spark that's not going through the plug, but spark that's leaving the ignition wires and grounding itself some other places. I did try that, except I didn't spray water on everything, but I did start the truck in the dark and looked around, and I didn't see anything. I didn't hear any ticks or see any little lightning bolts or nothing like that. So I don't believe that's a problem, and the plugs, wires, cap, rotor are within a couple years old and probably less than 3,000 miles on them, so I'm not really totally trying to blame those just yet either. Someone also said it might be transmission related, and I don't remember where I seen that. It might have been Eric the Car Guy, and I do seem to have some transmission issues, but I think mostly it's just that I get it over full, and I see bubbles in the fluid. And I checked my fluid here a while back, and it was kind of dark. So I have a suction device that I used. One of these things. I can't see that because of all the sunlight behind me. Sorry about that. I really like that thing. It's like 20 bucks at Advanced Auto or whatever it is. Well worth it. I bought 2 of them. One for transmission fluid, and then like maybe one for engine oil or brake fluid, or transfer case and rear diff gear oil, stuff like that. But I sucked out as much as I could and put in fresh and tried to keep it under the full line, and of course it did make a difference. I still have the problem. Oh, and I still kind of debunked the whole transmission thing, because I can actually make it stall in park and in neutral. So it still seems like it's just very engine only symptom. Another thing about the throttle position sensor, I have 2, and they both exhibit the exact same symptom of it stalling offline. So I really don't think it's the TPS. Okay, so let's get into the engine bay and hook up our fuel pressure and vacuum gauges and start doing some tests. Okay, first off, let's get rid of the air cleaner. And you will immediately see my fuel pressure adapter right there. I will say that was quite a pain to get on, because the metal lines that come off of it run to the back of the engine back here and down, and actually one of the studs that bolts the engine transmission together has a rubber hose clamp type thing that holds the 2 lines together. So you can't force these back unless you take that thing off, and it was not really that easy to get to. Let's see. Go around to the Egr solenoid. This is the vent nipple that I want to hook up to, just to see if it's actually pulling vacuum while it's running. It should not. Okay, so here's my vacuum gauge. No idea where I got it. Had it forever. This is some tea that I had laying around. I had no idea where I got that from either. But I was teeing it right here. And what I'll do is remove it from the tee and put it right on that nipple. And then I'm going to run it for a second and just see if we see vacuum on that gauge. I guess I could also see if the fuel pressure gauge sits down there somewhere where it's legible. And I'm not going to let the camera sit here on its own, so I'm going to start and come back. The truck does have remote start, but there's a switch over there for the hood open. And it shouldn't start with the hood open, but that switch gets corroded and sometimes it will start. So no, it doesn't want to, so that's good. Okay, so now I've got my T back onto the vacuum line, coming from the throttle body to the Egr solenoid. And I'm trying to run the gauges up to the windshield, so we'll have something to look at while we're driving. Already done the fuel pressure gauge. Let's see, there was some guy talking something about the injector spray pattern. So let's look at that real quick. Okay, so one of Eric's suggestions was to do the vacuum gauge test where you're looking for exhaust restriction. And I think he said to hold it at 2,000 RPMs and see if the vacuum decreases. And the engine is still cold, so we'll give that one a shot. The needle does seem to be kind of bouncy. RPMs. If anything, it got better. The engine's cold, 2,000 RPMs. Fuel pressure is staying very steady at 10,000. Vacuum looks like it's 22. Yeah. So I think I'm gonna go get it hot and try to do this stumble thing, because one of the things I noticed is I lose all vacuum when it stumbles. Okay, it's barely warming up. I'm just getting out of the driveway, and you can see it's kind of all over the place. That's if I just barely touch the throttle. I'm talking not even a quarter throttle, and I lose vacuum. We're at about 700 RPMs idle. Very bouncy. I don't remember doing that bouncy stuff before. Okay, I'm at like 1,000, 1,500 RPMs, and I can just sit here and just barely play with the throttle and just lose vacuum real bad. Okay, there's a bit of a problem is I'm getting hot, and I shouldn't be. I don't think so. I've rarely seen that needle go over 210. And now it's dropping. But anyway, I'm cruising along at 35 miles an hour, you know, less than 1,500 RPM. And I can just sit here and just barely touch the throttle. That vacuum gauge is all over the place. That wasn't even full throttle. That's full throttle. There's a bit of hesitation, kick down. That's completely off throttle. That's just cruising throttle. I can just, whenever that needle moves like that, that's just me playing with it with my foot. Let's see if I can get the fuel gauge to drop, maybe at wide open throttle. Yeah. Okay, I'm coming up to a stop, and I'm about operating temperature. I don't think I've been driving for quite 20 minutes yet. I'm just curious if I'll get it to stumble off the line, and if so, if it'll show it on the vacuum gauge. Not really. Maybe next stop. Well, I've been driving for 20 minutes and it still didn't hesitate. Fuel pressure never moved. And let's do the vacuum test again.
I'm just sitting still at 2,000 RPMs, I get better vacuum than I ever get. That's really weird. Also, fuel pressure. I'm pretty sure it dies pretty quickly after I shut the engine off. Not sure how normal that is. Could be another clue though. Okay, I think I've got it doing it again. Yeah, did it just a little bit there. To a parking lot here where I can screw around a little bit. You can see it's not even getting to the green. It didn't do it that time. Trying to do it. A little bit worse. If I give it enough, it'll definitely do it. Oh, come on. There, and it finally kicks in. And then that's maybe quarter throttle. Maybe not even that. Let's see if I can do it again from the rolling. Still only a quarter, but man. Gave in. I'm just sitting in park. You can see I lose all vacuum. It's full throttle, but this is just if I just tap on it with maybe quarter, maybe a third.